if you have children, you have to have an estate plan. What happens if you don't make it home from this meeting? Who's going to pick up your kid at school today?
Today's guest is attorney Scott Lynett, a man deeply dedicated to his family, his community, and his work as a trusted estate planner, helping business owners and high net worth families protect what they've built and pass it on to the people they love. Born and raised in Dunmore, Pennsylvania, Scott shares stories of being a fourth-generation steward of a family business legacy and how that shaped his transition into becoming a legacy planner himself. As a small business owner, he understands firsthand the tension that can exist between family, business, responsibility, and purpose. And in this conversation, we put it all on the table. We hope you enjoy it as much as we did.
So, Scott, thank you very much for being here. We have a lot to talk about. We have a lot of similarities, too, that we're swimming in the same waters at times. But why don't we start with just an introduction of yourself and a little bit of how you got from being a young dude and college-age dude to all of a sudden here you are with your estate planning, your law practice, and that's not something that happened quickly.
No, I took a very roundabout way to get here. So grew up in Dunmore, went to Boston College, did my undergrad. I did a year in the Jesuit Volunteer Corps in Buffalo, New York, working at a legal services agency that helped abused women and children. So that was an eye-opening experience for me. Sure. Then went to law school at Georgetown and got out of there, clerked for Judge Nealon Sr. back in Scranton, and then got hired by the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office. So started off as a prosecutor, spent 5 years in court every day, doing jury trials, doing judge trials, putting drug dealers in jail, and was in the major trials unit. Did that for 5 years and then interviewed at the firms in Philly, hated the whole hourly model, came back to work for the family business. I was there for 13 years, worked at the Scranton Times and worked with my uncle and my cousins. Left there in 2013. I bought a business. I learned a lot of lessons about how not to buy a business, which I'm happy to share because I made every mistake you could possibly make.
Nice. Put this in the journal. Yeah. I'm getting this book out. I might need that other one.
Yeah, exactly. And then thankfully we bought a couple of other businesses. We merged them all together. And then during COVID, started this as a side hustle, actually helping some business owner friends of mine with transition and family business succession issues. I'd been doing that for a few years, and during COVID was having coffee with a friend of mine and sort of bemoaning the fact that I was trying to find my passion in life and looking for something that really juiced me up. And he's like, "You seem to love this business succession thing. Can you turn that into a career and a business that you love?" And that's what got me going, and decided that if I could integrate my, estate planning, and that brought home everything I love to do. So I hung out the shingle about 4.5 years ago, and, thank God it's been a great ride since.
Yeah. Put a shingle right out on the street. Huh?
I did. We did.
I used that term the other day, and my son was like, "What does that mean?" I was like, it's an old guy saying.
Yeah, exactly. Right, exactly.
Your dad's an old guy. So just out of curiosity, what was the stress level, the anxiety level when you were working for the DA and everything, or when you were prosecuting, I should say?
So it was a great, you were literally in court every day with a packet of files. So you are just going from one trial to the next. It was a great job, but it was 60 plus hours a week. Every week, just nonstop. And when you were when I was in a jury, if I was in a multi-day jury trial, you didn't even sleep. All you did was go to trial, eat, and then go back to the office. So it was a terrific job, but it's a young man's job. It was something to do in my 20s, not something I would want to be doing today.
Yeah. Not much balance with that lifestyle. Yeah.
If the contrast, right, that there's no depth. It's volume. And now when you look at what you do now, before you start planning anything, you're like, just talk to me, right? Just let me understand what's going on in your life, your business and your family, and let's figure a way forward.
Yeah.
Total opposite.
Yeah, it really is. You're taking a very deep dive. And, as you experience, and both of you experience in your businesses, so much of it is psychological. It really is. What are the relationships? What are the fears you have about your kids? What are your concerns about your children or whatever? Where do you come from? What's your mindset about money? All those sorts of things, it all interacts. And having those deep conversations. What happens if you don't make it home today? What's the plan for the kids? And talking about those kind of fears, it's a much deeper dive.
Yeah. I love this job. We work with a lot of the same kind of clients, but we do different parts of their whole picture.
Right.
But when it comes to like exit planning, a business selling, and the owner, the person who started that business, worked it for 35 years, transitioning to something else, the stats out there are somewhere around 70%, 75% of them regret a year later, regret having sold it. But it's not mostly for financial reasons. It's because they haven't figured out what their whole life has been. We just talked to
Go,
somebody
go,
about
go.
this. Yeah, it's just go, 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 working on the business. It's part of my life. And all of a sudden, I don't know what to work on. I don't know what to do. And you're like, well, work on yourself. They're like, what?
What's that?
So some of this stuff, if we get ahead, and I know planning is like a very big thing to you as well. And so
Mhm.
if you can get out ahead of that, you can prep somebody, right? But most people, they're not doing it. They're like, I'm out, I'm selling. Yeah. But you like that.
It is. It's
Help them no matter when they come to you.
well, right. And as I'm sure you talked about that, and the biggest challenge becomes everyone knows what they're going to retire from. They don't know what they're going to retire to. And so many business owners are just afraid of, I know that I want to retire, but then what am I going to do? And so, I'm going to travel, I'm going to golf. Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to get you about 6 to 9 months.
Yeah.
And then, and
Yeah.
then what are you going to do?
Yep.
I always love this. There's this concepts of the three different kinds of happiness that you guys may be familiar with. So there's the happiness of, just sensory happiness. So you're having a great glass of wine, you're having a great meal. And then there's the happiness of gratitude, just recognizing everything you have in your life. And then there's a third type of happiness that I think is critical that a lot of people don't realize. And it's the happiness of excellence. It is constantly getting better at something and not being excellent at it, but enjoying the journey
Yeah.
of getting better and better at something.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when people, especially business owners, give it up, they don't realize how much the happiness of excellence has been a part of who they
Yes.
are. And they've built this business and they have they've done this thing and it's amazing and with all the validation they've got it. And then they're ready for the sensory happiness. They're going to have wine. They're going to have great food. They're going to play golf. They're grateful for their family and everything else, but they lose that happiness of excellence.
Yeah.
And to me, it's, you need all three, and you
Mhm.
can't, having tons of sensory is not going to replace the missing happiness of excellence. And
Mhm.
that's, in my mind, that's what they're missing.
Yeah.
Wow, that's huge. It's a shift of identity. It's who they
Right.
are and who they believe they are and
Yes.
what history has shown them that they are. And all of that experience just keeps proving it over and over again. But now without that experience, they can't replace it
Right.
with experiences that don't create that identity. So how do you help them with that?
It's you're trying to tap in. If there's a hobby, is there a passion or something, something they've always wanted to do that, what's the
Mhm.
thing you always wanted to do, you and your wife, that you talked about that you're never able to do?
Mhm.
What's the hobby you've always been interested in? And can we find that? I mean, some of it becomes getting really good at investments. I've always been fascinated by investments and learning more about that. Can you grow that area? I had a grandfather that was his other. He was a physician, and he would work from 6 o'clock in the morning. He'd get to work at 6 a.m. He'd be done at noon, and then the rest of the afternoon he'd just watch the markets. He'd read the Investor's Business Daily, and he's
Yeah.
this is like pre-internet,
Yeah.
and he just was fascinated by that. He'd
Mhm.
read companies' annual reports, so that became his passion
Sure.
when he was ready to retire.
Yeah.
So it's trying to discover what that is. And sometimes it's being a grandparent. Sometimes
Yeah.
I'm going to be an amazing grandparent. Not going to miss a single basketball game. And I'm going to, but whatever it is, it's trying to find that and what they want to be.
One of my partners, John Burke, just said on a trip we were on, he brought up a very interesting point, and I never thought about it, but I think he's right according to what we see data-wise. A lot of the folks the non-business owner retirees that we work with, folks that they've done basically the same job or worked for the same company for long, they don't have a problem nearly as much as that transition. Like they've got their bucket list. They know they want to go here for 6 months out of the year or whatever, and they're off to the races. It's the business owners that really kind of trip themselves up. And it's usually like they just didn't see it coming.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah. And it's hard for them to get out of that. And I think you nailed it too. Identity. Yeah. So there's a lot of work in there. And when you try to sit there and talk to them about some of those things that are not tactile things,
Right.
it can be a difficult conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's validating when we're all business owners. There's something validating about going someplace. And like, I joke all the time with my family. I'm like, I don't know why, I talk to my wife and kids. I say, I don't know why you guys don't think I'm funny, because everyone at work thinks I'm hysterical. And every joke I tell is the funniest joke they've ever heard.
That
So
was funny.
I don't know what's wrong with you.
Yeah.
But these people, they
Yeah.
get me.
Yeah.
Like, but there's a validation. Like,
Yes.
they're going to laugh at your jokes. They're going to be like, there is something to be said for that.
You're paying them to laugh
Oh,
at
well, I don't think so.
you. Trust me, that's why they laugh in my office.
So that's all I need to do is I need to pay people to laugh.
Right.
It's not happening.
My payroll's gotten out of hand now.
Yeah.
It's a great place to work. It's like stand up every day in my office. Let me ask you a little bit of a different question. So we're talking a lot about business owners, but estate planning, when should I start thinking about estate planning? I don't need to be a business owner, right? It's all over the place.
No, anyone who has kids, rule one, if you have children, you have to have an estate plan. I mean, there is no way that you can. I always say, what happens if you don't make it home from this meeting? Who's going to pick up your kid at school today?
Yeah.
Like, let's talk about the most basic thing in the world. Where are they going to sleep tonight? Like, they will have just lost their parent. Whose bed are they going to sleep in? It is really, that's the conversations that I have along those lines are very sort of the most basic ones. But anyone who, and I'm not trying to talk myself out of a job, but even if you're a 25-year-old and you have a car and everything else, at least go online and get yourself something. I mean,
right.
I'm not saying you have to come to me and get a full estate plan, but at least get a will so that if God forbid something happens, they know this is going to your sister and this is going to your brother, and your family isn't left, in addition to having lost a child, with a complete disaster on their hands because, everyone has an estate plan, whether they know it or not. The question is, are you going to write it yourself, or is it going to be the legislature?
Right.
And you're going to, in which case, if you die without a will, that's what happens. So, I had a couple come in who were so nice yesterday, and they are in their early 30s and they have young kids. And it was exactly this conversation. They said, our kids are 8 and 5. We should have done this 8 years ago, but at least we're here now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the hardest part, is having that. I tell all my clients, especially when you have kids, write a love letter to your kids. The first line should be, if you're reading this, things didn't work out the way I planned, but here's what I hope happened to you, and here's why I'm doing all this, and here's my dreams for you. And so hopefully that letter sits in an envelope and gathers dust for 50 years.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's needed, it'll be nice, and I will tell you that's going to mean an awful lot.
That's great. And you should do it right when they're born, because after that, they rip your soul out. 20 years. No, I'm just kidding. That's a great idea, though.
That is.
And to your point, I've had clients sitting in front of us who, I don't really need a will. I don't really have any assets. I'm like, your kids, what an asset, right? And I'm like, oh yeah, that's true. Yeah. So that's 100% right. What about, sorry, I'm like random things.
Please.
Trusts. So I just complimented you because you have a great cheat sheet for advisors like us about the different types of basic trusts and where they play a role in different parts of your life. But a lot of people think trusts are for really, really rich people, but they're not. They're tools to get certain things done.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's sort of the misconception about trusts, is they're for rich people. And if you use a trust, you're going to have to give up control of whatever it is you own to a trustee. And I think trust and life insurance are Swiss Army knives. They can be used for so many different purposes, especially in my world, in the estate planning world. So you can use a trust as just a basic estate planning tool, a revocable living trust. If you don't want your family to have to go through court, which is what happens if you die with a will. Or you can use it if you want to make sure your house doesn't get taken by Medicaid. If you end up in a nursing home and you want to protect your home and make sure that ultimately that goes to the kids and that the government doesn't end up with your entire estate, there are trusts that can do that as well. There's special needs trusts that we set up for children who have special needs that are going to need care for their entire lives. They're going to need, that will help protect those assets from the government. So it's a Swiss Army knife. And about half my practice is will-based, about half of it is trust-based. And it's really just depends on the client's needs and what they're interested in. But people get very afraid of when they hear the term trust, and they don't realize you can have a trust and not lose control. And get a lot of benefits without giving up control, which once they understand that, and that's a lot of our conversations that I have with clients, is just sort of demystifying it.
Yeah.
Then they're like, oh, I didn't know
Okay,
that.
good.
Yeah.
Well, so much of that is predicated on the relationship they have with the rest of the family, right?
Oh,
If their adult kids are there and saying, "Mom or Dad, I think you should do this,"
mhm.
there's this little part in their mind saying, "Why are they encouraging me to do this?" And if the relationship is strong, then they're all on the same team, right? But if there's any dissension in the ranks,
Right.
it's like, "Wait, you're after my house," and then you have to sift through. That's a challenging job. I know
Mhm.
it's challenging for our conversations. We don't practice law, you do,
Right.
so you've got to actually walk them to the finish line. Yeah.
Yeah, the family dynamics play like it does in like I know you experience even in your coaching when
Mhm.
you're dealing with someone, the parent-child relationship and how someone was raised. Like I see it in the conversations that I have.
Yeah.
Like anything before 12 years old is the hardwiring to me. That's
Mhm.
the hardware. Everything after 12 years old is the software. But
Hmm.
Yeah.
there's issues in the hardware sometimes that you'll see play out in family dynamics with middle-aged children who are still dealing with sibling rivalries from 40 years ago
Yeah.
that are playing out at the table.
That 12-year-old is making decisions about estate planning at that point. Yeah.
Exactly. I
Yeah.
mean, you see you'll see, I've had siblings get into that room and start arguing about, the family business or dad who's long gone. Dad said it was going to be like this, and he always told me it was going to be this way. And like,
Yeah.
it, and it was something that was said 30 years ago. And it really, you never worked there in the summers. I worked there in the summers. How come you like, it is, it's fascinating the scorekeeping that can go on
Oh, wow.
that, ultimately can play out.
I'm gonna ask you a leading question, and you can go there if you want. But why is planning so important to you? Have you seen planning not go ideally?
Yes.
You know where I'm going.
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
so one of the things that made me want to get into estate planning was my grandfather passed away back in 2005, and my only experience that time had been a prosecutor in the DA's office. I never touched this area of the law in law school. I wanted to be a trial lawyer. I wanted to be in the courtroom. I didn't want to this. I never saw myself doing this. But my grandfather passed away in 2005, and he resisted doing estate planning for his entire life. His estate plan was he wasn't going to die. Spoiler alert, that did not work. The result of which was the laws were different back then as far as taxation. We ended up paying literally millions of dollars in unnecessary taxes. And there were other family issues that came as a result of that, but it turned into a complete debacle. And this was a situation which should have been there should have been nothing wrong. A
mhm.
little bit of advanced planning on his part. He had an attorney who did it the best he possibly could, but if he had done a little bit of advanced planning, there was a lot of money there that could have gone to pay college tuitions
Right.
and paid for down payments for homes for members of the family, and instead we wrote a giant check to the IRS and the Department of Revenue. So seeing that, and then some of the family issues that came as a result of it, it was just mind blowing to me.
And heartbreaking, I'm sure.
Horrible. I mean, absolutely, painful in how that played out. And it was the same thing I saw in my family business. Unfortunately, our family business succession, we had hoped that the Scranton Times would remain a generational business. We were the fourth generation. We had every intention. We wanted to get it to the fifth and the sixth. And, the same thing, just watching up close how decisions got made for the wrong reasons and then the penalty that we paid emotionally and financially. Unfortunately, I got that's what brought me into this practice area was watching people close to me get really, really hurt.
Why this feels like a Maria question. You would ask this, but why do you think your grandfather was so resistant to do it, to do any sort of planning?
It's a great question. My grandfather was fiercely independent and fiercely private. He was World War II vet, had worked briefly in the mines when he was a teenager, and then decided there was a cave in right near him. He said, I was making great money, and there was a cave in right near me. And I thought, this isn't what I want to do.
I'm out.
So he decided he's definitely go to college and became a physician. So he just, I think, literally, like a lot of people, he struggled with the idea of his own mortality. He couldn't somehow face his own mortality. And I don't know if that was a result of seeing some of his friends die up close during World War II.
Mm.
He was in Europe. And I don't know if that put it in him, but he couldn't go there in his head. And that just really put a barrier up. And I think there was, to your point earlier, he had a thing about his kids, about this is my stuff. I don't want to talk
Yeah.
about it. You'll get it when I'm gone, and I'm not going there.
And your
Yeah.
grandmother?
She had passed away very young. So she passed away at age 59. She had a brain aneurysm out of
Oh,
nowhere and passed away. So he was a widower from 1969 until he died in 2005. So she
wow.
had, when she passed away, it was completely unexpected.
Wow. So he really was independent.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
and just super. I mean, I was probably the closest relationship he had in his life after my grandmother passed. And it was
Mhm.
just, that was how he was wired. But so many, like, and you've seen this too. You'll see people die. And I've seen this happen where they have 8-figure net worth and they don't have a will. They just put it off and put it off and don't. It's always something they're going to get to it.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. And so he spent so many decades alone that the business was his life.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, and that was, and this, so this was this is my grandfather. This is what I'm talking about here, was a physician. So he was, his identity was being a physician,
Gotcha.
and that was different than the family business was
I
that's
gotcha. Okay.
the other branch of the family. But he was, and sometimes really smart people get in their own way.
Yeah,
Sure.
of course.
All right.
Yeah.
They think they can outsmart God.
Uh-huh.
I'm just it's interesting, and I'm just applying that kind of conceptually to many clients that I've talked to, many who never became clients because they couldn't. The mindset, which people say is a joke sometimes, like I came into the world with nothing. My kids will start from scratch. If there's anything left, that's
Mhm.
great, but that's not my priority. Leave them something. But at some point, once they've had a reasonable amount of success, they've kind of outgrown their ability to spend it away. And there's a lot you could do by design with those assets versus, like you said, let the legislate it away
Right.
to wherever. So I wish I could. I wish I could figure out the hard wiring to maybe reconnect a couple of things to allow them to think a little bit out of the box of how to be purposeful
Hmm.
with whatever's left, because right now that whatever is a big number, right? And you guys experienced that on the unfortunate side of where it went, where it could have went versus where it did.
Hmm.
But hey, the government needs funding too, so
Yeah, especially these days.
yeah. Right. Anyway, sorry, I went off on a tangent there. You always have a bunch of stuff.
I know. So I'm thinking about now. So you transition, you're about 5 years into your business now. You
Mhm.
said, how's that going for you? How do you feel? Do you feel fulfilled,
I
content,
love it.
motivated?
Yeah, I really. So it was interesting. I had never, previously I'd always just come into a business, and when I went and worked for my family business, it was in existence for 100 years. So I came into an existing structure and everything else. When I bought my other businesses, my printing company and everything else, and I rolled those up, I came into an existing system. I had never taken something from absolute scratch and built it just exactly the way I wanted it. And that was such a different experience for me. It was the difference between going and buying a suit off the rack into having a custom made like
Yeah.
suit. The feeling is just so different because everything, I was very intentional when I launched the practice around defining exactly the client who I wanted to go after, exactly the client experience I wanted them to have through the entire process, having a really well-defined and tight niche around my practice, which is why, that's why I lead with legacy planning. I don't want to be so many law offices. Nothing wrong with this. It's just, Smith, Jones, and Johnson.
Mm,
Like, and I really wanted to say, okay, this is what I do. This
mhm.
is so I go into that office every day, and I do really enjoy it because I feel like it fits my personality perfectly, and the business was really built, to super serve our clients, which, we thankfully have been very good at doing that with the team. Zach and the rest of the team that I mentioned we were talking about when I
Mm.
walked in, they're just phenomenal. I mean, they make my life so easy.
So do you feel like you've been working 24/7 since you've started it?
Yes, I've gotten in the habit of taking Saturdays off because for a
Okay.
while that
Whoa.
wasn't the
Yeah.
habit.
Yeah.
But I find the work fascinating. It
Mhm.
is my wife says that I don't have a career, I have a hobby that I love that people pay me for.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's really, like, I enjoy it's so I'm an old Dungeons& and Dragons nerd from back in
Oh,
the day.
yeah. I mean, I don't know what you're talking
Yeah.
I definitely don't.
So, this is what happens to Dungeons& and Dragons nerds. They
Okay.
become
That's
estate
right.
planners who are fascinated by the tax code.
Right. Roll the 20-sided dice.
Yeah, right. There you go. You've been there.
My friends told me about it.
So it's really, I mean, I work on Sundays just in my basement office, but it's because I enjoy it. And I go down rabbit holes on these things because it's going back to the earlier comment, like, I'll never be excellent at this. If
Mm.
I live to be 100 years old, because it's always changing. There's always a new law. There's always a new technique. There's always a new case that's been decided that puts a tweak on it. So it's like, I know I'll be pursuing this until the day I drop.
Yeah.
And I'm always going to have an opportunity to grow, which is just fascinating to me.
Wow. And each client is probably coming with their own set of challenges, which keeps the variety too.
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
exactly. There is no, everyone's got a somewhat different priorities. And that's, the challenge for us is creating a system that will provide a consistent result while having a custom outcome all based on the needs of the client. As I'm sure very similar. Everyone's got
Yeah.
a different risk profile. Everyone's got a different family situation. And your Stonehouse does the same thing. It's got to be a custom outcome, although you have a strong process to make sure that the client gets what they want.
Yeah, just expand on that just a little. I feel like maybe I'm getting long in the tooth and snobbier or something about that, but I feel like clients look for so much more than it was very like, I just want a will
Hmm.
and something simple. Now it's, I've got this, I've got family, I've got a blended family, I have a business, my wife has a side hustle, like all these things going on. And I think collaboration among professionals is way more important than it ever was 20 years ago when I got in the business. And maybe it's just because I'm dealing with different clients, but I
Hmm.
think it's evolving. And when you find somebody that is good at their job, has that passion, and I know you know this, when you hand off a client and say, I really think you should talk to Scott, I think it'd be a great fit. In the back of your mind, you're like, don't drop this ball, Scott.
Hmm.
Right?
Absolutely.
Right? And when you find a couple of professionals, which I think there are fewer that really care, like
Hmm.
they secure that handoff. Thank you. I got it from here at what I'm good at. It allows everybody to play and play well together. And we joke about this all the time. I used to look at other guys in my industry as just like, oh, I can't even be in the same room. Like now I'm buddies with a lot of
Right.
them and we help each other. Or we first refer business occasionally.
Hmm.
I don't really do this. Do you do it? You know? So when you find professionals that are good, you want to hold on to them.
Hmm.
Same in my industry. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it is. And
Yeah.
so much of this is a team sport, especially in the business succession space. That is where, what are they going to do with the liquidity event? Who's their investment advisor that's going to make sure that? Who is not only going to deal with the business owner who's exiting, does the younger generation need coaching? Is there
That's
is
right.
there an up and coming who needs some executive coaching because you have a 35-year-old who's about to become a president of a company with 300 people? And is he good and is he smart? Maybe even, but he's not there yet. And he's
Yeah.
going to need some help in that segue. And having, so I always say that what I do is a team sport. You got to have a great investment advisor. You got to have a really sharp CPA. And then when in succession, who is the person, especially when you're dealing again with the younger generation, when he has a problem, who can he talk to and get real objective truth to power advice? That someone's not just going to try and kiss his butt because he's the president, who's not going to laugh at his
Yeah.
jokes because
Yeah.
he's the boss, but someone who's going to say, you're not. And we all had that person during our career. It was funny. I was listening to your interview with the folks from Lavish, and Micah and I have a mentor in common, Hal Marion from Time Shamrock,
Okay.
and that was Hal Marion's great gift. He could mentor people, but he also could call BS on you and was outstanding at it and really
Yeah.
good at sitting you down and saying, listen, here's what you need to know, and
Yeah.
here's how you're coming off in this situation, and having that person is just invaluable.
I have a very good client who took a big risk on something, and I remember sitting one on one, and he asked me, "What are your thoughts on this?" And I think he expected me to say, "Great, go for it." And I said, "Look, I might lose you as a client, but I got to be very candid with you. Like, do you know anything about this? Because I've never seen you deal with this type of business, and
Right.
I don't know if this is a battle you can win, and it could really damage you financially and emotionally." And he said, "That's why I come to you, because
Mm.
you're honest with me." He goes, "Everybody else will just yes me." And I was like, "Oh, shoo." But I mean, that's what you get paid for. I
Right.
mean, sure, you've all told people, get out of your own way.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And sometimes the most successful people need to hear that once in a while. Yeah, I just love this talk. I love
I'm
this
sure the
business.
more you do it and the more you see, the more you can help people coming in because you've seen so many different
Yeah.
possible scenarios and you can
Mhm.
see how things can play out or roadblocks that people can't see. So having your perspective in their situation is probably so important because you're seeing things they can't even imagine
Right.
from where they're sitting.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
What about some trends that are going on in maybe in your industry, or whether it's exit planning or individual planning?
I think we're seeing just sort of the earlier point, more and more people are understanding that it is a holistic approach, that you really have to look beyond single. You can't have us all in silos. Like you can't have your estate plan over here and your investment advisors over here
Right.
and your CPA is over there. Like the best clients are the ones. I have one client who's phenomenal. He has what he calls a life team, and it's all of
Yeah.
those people. And he gets together with his wife and his kids and his life team once a year, and we sit and we have a meeting, and I'm part of that group, and it's fascinating to
Yeah.
see. He just goes through everything, and he's planning his succession of his business, and he's planning that he and his wife are going to build a house down south, and he wants to do this and he wants to do that, and like
You guys
seeing.
have like Family Smith
Yeah.
uniforms or something?
Exactly.
That'd be kind
But
of
wear your hats.
too far, too far.
So I
That's a
think
great
that's
idea.
yeah. So I think that is some
Yeah.
people are more and more recognizing that's really critical to have that. And in artificial intelligence is obviously something that's changing my industry pretty dramatically, pretty quickly. And it's playing with that and experimenting, and we'll looking where we can put it in, and where it's appropriate is I'm sure you're seeing in your industry as well.
Everybody is, yeah,
Yeah.
Mhm.
no doubt.
So but it's also fascinating. It's a great tool that I will
Mhm.
use sometimes to so I facilitated a family meeting a few weeks ago for a client of mine with his family, and we were dealing with some very specific issues, and it was neat to go into chat and say, okay, here are the issues, here are the players in the room, create an exercise that will help have the family have a good discussion around these topics.
Wow.
And it was because it
Yeah.
gave me, it wasn't, as Chad always does, it doesn't give you the idea, but it gets your head going of, okay,
Yeah.
that could do that. So, but it's that blend of the technology and the human, because Chad can't go into the room and facilitate it, but Chat can help get you those sorts of ideas going that then allow someone like myself or a coach like yourself, Maria,
Mhm.
or Bob with you, with your clients, the same thing. It just really
Yeah.
helps you reframe some issues in your head and give you creative ways to, like, for me, surfacing issues is the biggest issue. If I was to summarize my family's failure to transition our family business after 130 years, it was an inability to have difficult conversations.
Ooh.
So one of my most important jobs is I try to facilitate difficult conversations and give my clients a safe space to have a difficult conversation without getting emotional.
That's paramount to any relationship.
Yeah,
And that's what you're dealing with is all relationships.
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where we dropped the ball. And
Mm.
unfortunately, we paid a very steep price for it.
Do you think if you were doing this 15 years ago, you could have maybe salvaged that?
Oh gosh, you sound like my wife.
Oh,
She
sorry.
goes, no, no, no.
Huh.
Well, actually, all she does is say, "You couldn't have."
Yeah,
Aw.
I'm sure it goes over
Yeah.
in your head a bunch of times.
Yeah, it's really, I have that thought a lot in my head. If I knew, and that's honestly one of my biggest regrets when I left the family business. I wasn't honest about what I was seeing. I didn't, because I didn't want to have a difficult conversation either.
Mm.
And so I made an excuse about how I just wanted to start my own company and I always dreamed of being an entrepreneur, which was half true. But
The
the
other
truth,
half was unsaid.
the other half was the part I couldn't say because I was afraid. I was afraid how my father was going to react. I was afraid how my uncle was going to react. And so I chickened out. And that was one of my biggest regrets, was that I didn't tell them the truth of what I
Mhm.
was seeing.
Yeah. correct me if I'm wrong, it's not a fear of the actual moment of the conversation, it's a fear of driving a permanent stake between the relationship, and now you're outed,
Well, right, and that was exactly.
ousted, whatever, yeah.
And that was, and it goes back to a lot of the conversations that I have with my clients is, the it's always important to know what hat you're wearing in every conversation, especially if you're in a family business. Am I talking to my boss or am I talking to my dad?
Yeah.
Am I wearing the son hat or am I wearing the vice president hat? What hat am I wearing? And there was a lot of hat confusion. And unfortunately, I was afraid of losing my dad and my uncle if I told the truth,
Mhm.
Mm,
even though I knew I was going to be losing him as a boss, but I was afraid it would hurt the family relationship.
that's so hard. And you're not the only one.
Right.
This is a real thing in many family businesses.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's deep, and all I can think about is hat confusion.
I
I don't know if I'm gonna steal that.
Well, so when I have meetings with family, when I do family business meetings, one of the things I literally have a box full of hats that I bought on Amazon,
Oh, I
and
love that.
it says favorite daughter, number one son, dad, mom, CEO, president, vice president, and I put them on the table, and I'm like, okay, just what hat? Make sure when we're having this conversation. Like I had a client who bought his daughter a house, and he was talking about how talking about the pay and everything else. He's like, well, I bought you a house, and I said, stop. You didn't buy her house because you're her boss. You bought her a house because you're her dad. Don't confuse these issues that somehow impacts her compensation. These are two very different things. We got to make sure we're wearing the correct hats when you're having this conversation. Thank your dad for buying you a house, but then don't hold it over her head as
Right.
part of her compensation.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. That's really something. It really helps to have that third party take the emotion out of it.
Well, and you see it escalate, and it's funny when I'm doing my job well, you can see it de-escalate, and you'll see their eyes be like, "Oh, I get it now."
Yeah.
It doesn't always go that way, but if you can draw them together and get them on the same page,
Yeah.
it's like the perfect storm, right?
When you have some of those
Positive.
moments where you see it click,
Yeah.
and I'm sure you've had
Drive
these
home with a big
conversations
smile,
too,
right? Yeah, like I made a difference today.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Changed a couple people's lives. That's fantastic.
Their legacies. I mean, in that
Yeah,
moment, you're shifting
be.
the entire trajectory of potentially generations.
right. Yep. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I want to follow up on something you commented a little earlier about getting a mind shift and how some people make the shift and some people don't. And I think that, for me, the word stewardship is where the shift can occur. Am I the owner of this wealth or I am the steward of this wealth? And if people can stop seeing themselves as the owner of the wealth, I earned it, it's mine, I'm going to do whatever I want with it, and say, I earned it, I'm going to enjoy it. But part of my job is to preserve it for whatever's coming next. I mean,
Right.
maybe next is a huge charitable donation for an amazing charity. Maybe it's for the family, whatever it is. But if you start to visualize yourself as the steward versus the owner, that can be a big shift in mindset. And I often say to people, I swipe this from I think David Brooks, the columnist, when people start thinking more about their eulogy than they do about their resume, a shift can really occur.
Yeah. You're a smart guy, Scott. You got a lot of cool sayings. I like it.
Yeah, I like it too. I'm thinking about it too from the perspective of like being a creator of your life and your legacy instead of just saying it is what it is
Mhm.
and letting that unfold naturally. We really can. I don't know if people understand how much they can create in their lives. They can design anything that they want. There's a solution for everything.
Mhm.
And that's where what you were saying before is you could do this, you could use it for this, you could use, and to go to somebody who has the tools that can design that for you can be really important and
Mhm.
empowering, but you're still at the decision making place.
Well,
And
right.
when you don't stand in that power, you lose all your power. Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. And that, again, it plays in all of our professions. I
Yeah.
think
Oh,
I think that
true.
is true for each of us in its own way. It plays out in all of our industries.
So when you started five-ish years ago on this, when you mapped it out in your mind, maybe you did it on paper, you've got these awesome things here. Did you see it being where it is today, or has it exceeded your expectations so far, or is it on track?
It's exceeded my expectations. I literally, the day I changed my LinkedIn profile, I started getting calls from people, which completely stunned me. It's literally reached out to me the day after, and people started bringing me in just because there aren't a lot of attorneys who specialize in this area of the law. and I bring a little bit something. I have 20 years of actually running businesses under my belt as well. I have an MBA, so it's like I'm a little bit different from some of the other practitioners, but also I saw the consequences close up.
Right.
I worked in a family business. I saw the financial and emotional carnage that occurs when it's not done well. My father and his brother George were best friends. They shared a bedroom. They had adjoining offices for 50 years. They don't speak. That has broken my father's heart. He had his two other closest friends died in the last 18 months, and he basically has lost his brother, who was his other best friend. And I see it every time he talks about it. I hear it in his voice. And that's because we couldn't have hard conversations,
Yeah.
because we didn't know what hats we were wearing. We ignored some basic lessons. And just seeing my dad, who struggles with this, and he hides it, and he doesn't, I see it. Most people don't see it. But knowing that that's there, I think that drives me a lot. And I've been extremely blessed. I've had great clients. I've had an incredible team that I've been able to build that just has allowed me I've scaled a lot faster than I thought I was going to.
Do you ever let yourself get a victory lap?
Oh, I'm terrible at celebrating stuff like that. It's one of my, every once in a while I'll see something happen. I'll come out of a meeting and I'll see somebody connect, and
You let it in?
I do let it in. I'll be
Yeah.
like, I'll go home and, my fabulous bride and I will be having a tray of pizza and a glass of wine, and I'll be saying, this week was a good week. Like, this was one where
it's a cheat day. You're going to have pizza. What's that like? That's great.
Yeah. So it's become exactly the practice I dreamed it would be. Truthfully, it happened about 5 years faster than I thought. I thought it would have taken me longer to get to this point.
So I don't mean to be a breaker of Captain Obvious here, but in case no one's told you this, it's because I spent a weekend in Boston, so it's because you're wicked cool to talk to. You're wicked nice. I remember when one of my partners, Scott, and I met you maybe 2 years ago, and had lunch. And I remember literally getting back to the car and go, that guy's wicked cool. I just enjoyed talking to you. You feel genuine. Mm-hmm. Your heart's in the right place, and you're doing a great job. Check all those boxes. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what people really want. So it doesn't surprise me that you're having great success. I guess my question is, where do you take it from here? Do you scale? Do you stay right where you are and just keep crushing it? Or
I'm struggling with that in my head, because as a business person, of course, you always want to scale. Sure. Mm-hmm. It's like, I have this, oh my gosh, I have this incredible opportunity. There's wind in my sails.
Yeah.
The silver tsunami is coming. And, with the baby boomers aging and retiring and everything else, like it's a huge market opportunity. But at the same time, I think the personal touch of it is so critical to what I do. It's why AI can't replace, I believe, a lot of the work I do with families. And, same thing that you do in coaching clients through fear. Like, when the market's doing great, you don't hear from anybody. When the market takes a plunge, your phones ring off the hook. And that's when the rubber meets the road. And that's when you really bring value, is when you can reassure people. So I think I can get a little bit bigger than we are now, but I think it's never gonna become a large firm, just because it's got to be boutique, it's got to be personal touch, and that's such an important part of it.
By design.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, you get to choose.
Well, and that's right, and that's the fun part about it.
I mean, and your family and your life balance and your health and your well-being and your vitality is all tied into that. So if you are sacrificing yourself personally by scaling a business,
right, it's
not only getting diluted with the personal touch over here, but now you're also pouring less of yourself into it because you're extending yourself too much.
Right. Well, that's and one of the reasons why I take Saturdays off is because my wife began to say, I feel like you're enjoying this more than you're enjoying our marriage. And she's like, you should, we actually had this conversation a couple weeks ago. I said, you should be very happy that your wife feels this way, that I want to spend more time with you. Like, this is a great thing, but you have to give on this. So that was one of my, last year I said, okay, I'm taking every Saturday off. I am not going to work at all. We're going to go hiking in the woods. We're going to do whatever like last week we drove to State College to pick up our daughter from Pitt, and we just talked the whole way to State College. Like, we never turned the radio on. We just talked the whole way down.
You drove to State College to pick your daughter up from Pitt?
Well, she took the bus.
Oh. Yeah, I know.
Driving to Pittsburgh is like a nightmare, and there's an express bus from Pitt that drops them off at the bus station at State College.
That's great.
Yeah, so we got to pick her up at State College.
That's funny. My kids both went to State College. I was thinking that's roughly halfway there.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Rather than do the 10 hours. But it's a question about work-life balance and, what do you want?
Yeah. I don't know, I'm speaking for all of us, but when we first started out, it was to put food on the table, to put money in our pockets, get some stability in our life, right? That's why I started being a financial planner.
Mhm.
But then it became more than just me, and I brought in a couple people. Then it became a small business. Now it's a I don't know if I can use the word firm. I call it a firm. I feel like that's a legal term. There's probably a reason I can't use it, but anyway.
The SEC is not listening,
Yeah.
No,
hopefully.
well, yeah, I don't know if
They
the
might
SEC
be.
cares,
Yeah.
but the SEC is always listening. I know my compliance officer is always
Yeah.
listening. But the reason I'm saying is like when as you transition through life, your reasons for working may change a little bit, and by that I mean financial success is fine, but then when we used to talk about scaling, it was my business is not that difficult to scale. You just need to find more good people and keep
Mhm.
doing the same processes that you're doing, and then make tweaks as the rules change and all that stuff. But for every new advisor or several advisors and support person, there's a whole bunch more families you can affect, right? And then it continues to build, but eventually, like, I'm really in a weird spot now. I never really talked to my kids about this business at all. Now my son works in Stonehouse, and now my daughter will graduate from Penn State and is very interested about an entry point in the Stonehouse. And it's become far more than anything about me. And it almost I feel like the pressure's back on again.
Mhm.
It's so weird. And I say that this story because we're dealing with folks that built a business, and like you said, I earned this, I made this, versus I'm the steward of this.
Right.
And so will the next generation be the stewards? And there's a lot to unpack there.
Will they take ownership?
Well,
You
They're
know,
not getting
you
it
kind of
Yeah.
now,
want
so
them to
there's
take,
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
ownership of it. Yeah.
Yeah. No,
It's
so much to talk
interesting.
about that.
Mhm.
Hmm.
What else? What else is going on in your life?
I mean, all the kids are all good. My son's so my eldest son is heading to law school next year. So he's going through all that whole process. My other son just finished working for a company called Backroads. That's they're a tour company, so they do tours in 55 countries, and it's like active travel. So
Okay.
they'll
Cool.
do a
Bicycle.
5-day bike trip
Yep.
through the Napa Valley, and you'll go to all these different wineries and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
So it's stuff like that. So after that, he went and spent 18 days in Nepal, went to Everest Base Camp, hiked through the Himalayas, didn't bathe for 13 days
Nice.
because it's too darn cold. And a pot of boiling water was $2. He's like, Dad, I'm not paying that. I'm like,
They sell
I would have given
boiling
you the
water.
$2. Like,
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's funny.
so,
Is there a part of you that wishes you were him at times?
oh my,
though?
oh my
Yeah.
gosh, yes.
That's
I'd
cool.
always talked. I was fascinated by that book, Into Thin Air, from back in the '90s, which is about that doomed
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
expedition up Everest. And so we always talked about it in my house. And like I said, I always wanted to do that. I always wanted to do that. And then, of course, he goes out and does it like any good son. He goes
Yeah,
out and
that's
does the thing I've been
amazing.
talking about doing for 40 years.
The thing about Mount Everest is like most people learn from their mistakes and they become memories.
Right.
Like you pass the people that made mistakes. Like they're buried in the ice.
Yeah,
right?
green
Like,
boots,
yeah.
like the famous, some of the famous landmarks that are these literal
Yeah.
bodies
Ugh,
that are up there.
brutal.
So he did that, and then my
That's-
daughter's at a sophomore pitch. She's studying to be a PA, and so she's doing chemistry and biology and all the things that communications majors like me avoided like the plague
Yep.
back in the day.
Yep.
Yeah.
I discovered I couldn't BS my way through biology, so I wasn't taking that class.
I'm out.
Yeah, I'm not interested.
What are the challenges in your business right now? Are there any challenges? Are you kind of clicking right now?
It's really just I think we are just I'm very systems focused. So everything as a checklist, everything as a system. So we're just constantly building, getting better and better at our checklists in the different lines of business. So we have 3 lines of business. There's your standard meat and potatoes estate planning. You have your estate administration. So if someone dies and you're doing probate or trust administration or whatever. And then the third line of business is business succession, and really sort of the bigger planning for high net worth, ultra high net worth families. And so the first 2 we've really got systematized well. And now the business succession that's such a unique beast, and it's trying to systematize that.
Mm-hmm.
That's my biggest challenge right now.
Yeah.
Is we have the tools, but I don't have it down to a system yet. And I think that's, I always try to go there, to the extent I can. If I can systematize something, that helps me get my head around it. So I think just building out the systems, especially around the business succession side, is my
Yeah.
passion at the moment.
Have you looked at the SEPA designation?
I have looked at that, and I know a
Yeah.
couple of guys who've done that, and it
Yeah.
does seem it really does look very valuable.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
I got that last year, and I
Did
did
you
it.
like? Did you enjoy the class?
Yeah, I did it specifically for the process. I wanted to see what their process was,
Right.
and you know, the phrase that's used way too much in our industry is it's not cookie cutter, but I mean, small businesses is far from cookie cutter as it gets,
Right.
and so their systems are great, but what I found is everybody in the exit planning industry does it differently.
Right.
It really like it's just so different, and it really just depends what your market is and who you've helped so far. And
Mhm.
but I the one word I think that's the key to that whole thing is collaboration.
Right.
You can't be like we do everything soup to nuts. Like almost no one does.
Yeah.
You've got to be good at communication and working and handing off and accountability.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So, and the clients would love to have like a you're the only person I talk to, but it never, you can't be that to everybody.
No,
You got to be
exactly.
a little humble, I think, to be good at exit planning.
Well, I mean, I think anything like knowing what I don't know, and you know, there are times when I'll come into a business succession situation where I'm working with another estate planner. They've had an estate planner. They've been using them for years. They're thrilled with it, and I'm like, you know what? Great. That doesn't. I don't need to be the estate planner too. I'm happy to,
Mhm.
help you structure this succession and do the other things. And let's make sure that it's going to work with whatever plan that your longtime attorney has ever come up with. Like, I got no ego about that,
Yeah.
and I always learn something. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the fascinating thing. When I get to see somebody else's documents and what they do and how they draft,
Yeah.
inevitably I'll come away with, ooh, that's a really clever way to handle that. I never thought of that.
Yeah.
So for me, it just turns into an education.
The other, I think a challenge for that exit planning is somebody that comes to you and they think their business is like, what do you think it's worth? And they say $5 million. And you look at it and, you know, you think it's probably more like three and a half. Telling them that is not, it's not a recipe for awesomeness. It usually kind of like ruffles their feathers, but then you can explain it like, here's why. But then if you can also, if they're still sitting in front of you, say, I think we can get it to 5.
Right.
Or I think we can take it higher than 5, but it's going to take some time. And here are some things that we need to work on. If they are open to that, they end up with a much stronger number. But they hear about some random person in another city or another competitor
Right.
that sold. And, you know, most people don't realize there's a lot of that initial offer to get you to sit with the buyer. And then
Mhm.
once they start looking at it, like, oh, we're going to discount this and your clients are older and you're not growing as much as we thought you were going. And it takes it back to the 3.5, or whatever it is. I've seen it go the other way too. And then you get the brokers that come in there and like, I'm going to get you 15x for your business. And you're like, well, like, and everybody's got an angle, right?
Right.
And so you
Mhm.
just have to kind of and I think as a business owner, you get like overwhelmed because
Mhm.
you've been used to running this thing. Now it's all about valuations and 9x and what does that mean? And
Right.
what the heck is EBITDA?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
don't know. My accountant does this and he tells me that. And it's fun.
Right. Well,
It's a challenge, that's for sure.
and it goes back to the idea that you have these folks who are they're very much in control. They know what every number in their P&L means. They know what they can explain every line on their balance sheet because they built the darn thing and they know what's depreciating, blah, blah, blah. And now you come in and you're exactly right. You're speaking a different language and they start to feel not smart and not in control
Mhm.
because they don't understand what's happening.
Mhm.
So you've taken away their two main things that they feel every day when they walk into their
Yeah.
building. I'm smart and I'm in control.
Yeah.
Now you're telling them they're neither. And not only that, your business is not worth anywhere near you want. So I'm glad you can keep them at the table after telling them that because
Well,
that's the hardest part.
you know, Scott, you know what else I've been telling folks lately is you've been doing it for 30 years and you want to sell the business in 2 years. Part of that getting it ready for sale is to make yourself expendable, right?
Mhm.
But here's the news, like if you get to that point where you can step away for a reasonable amount of time or even indefinitely but still be an owner, you don't have to sell it.
Right.
You could own it if you felt confident about the team you have behind you. You could hold for a number of years till maybe the valuation gets to where you want. There's risk in that though.
Mhm.
I mean, from a financial planner's viewpoint, like that's a lot of risk in one company, small company, not maybe the best choice, but
Right.
if mentally you're not ready to walk out that door. It is also funny too because a lot of people get that I just want the highest dollar, but I try to talk to them about, like, let's talk about what you need to live the rest of your life comfortably. You might not need $12 million. You might need six.
Right.
And so that 12 after tax, what does it become? So, there's all kinds of wiggle room there. But people don't usually think that. They're just like, well, that guy down the street got this. So, and I was like, I'm also like, I get a little worried about private equity. It's
Hmm.
so frothy, this world with private equity right now. They're reaching down into all these channels for cash flow for
Right.
your business. When that private equity money kind of starts to look somewhere else, maybe your valuation. So there's a timing issue.
Well, yeah, and you've seen it, like, especially like in the HVAC space over the
Yeah,
last
yeah,
5 years.
yeah.
Private equity has done such a roll up in that space. The multiples that were being offered, some of them were, it was once in a lifetime stuff. Like,
Yes,
I'm not saying you should take this offer or not, but there's probably not going to be a better time in your lifetime to exit this business than at what these guys are going to offer you. Now, you're not going to like what they do to your business on the back end.
right.
You're not going to like what happens to your employees. So that's part of the trade-off that you're
Mm-hmm.
making. That's part of what you're selling
Mm-hmm.
is that. So are you going to be okay with that? But it's I've been on a lot of nonprofit boards and things, and seeing how that's affecting our communities in the United Way, and
Yeah,
how these private equity firms don't do, they're not having the big employee drives anymore, and they're not sponsoring the community events, and buying the tables at the Boy Scout dinner and all that kind of stuff that, like, the family owned companies used to. So it's having an impact far beyond the businesses
yeah,
themselves, that is just reverberating throughout the community in ways people don't fully appreciate.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I'm thinking like humans build businesses based on their own human needs, desires, emotions, family
Right.
dynamics, their own personal interests, things that bring them joy, right? But then to build a business to then sell, they're looking at different things and qualifying different things. So it's not always a match what you're
Right.
building versus what someone wants to buy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, why did you do this to begin with?
Mhm. Yeah.
I'm very old school. I think you and I fall into this category without knowing you to this level. I usually think there's this top dollar option, and then there's like basically give it away at a really low. I usually feel like that answer in the middle is probably the best for everybody.
Hmm.
You'll feel you'll get the money you need to live a good, happy life. You'll have stability for your family. Your employees will have a place to continue to earn for their families. Like that's what I like. There's almost 40 of us ish in Stonehouse right now, and I feel like there's 40 families. It's not just 40 people, it's 40 families
Right.
that's attached to that. So to just say, like, oh, I'm selling it someday and good luck, like,
Right.
I don't think I sleep. Yeah, I don't know. I
Yeah.
always preach every day, just be a good person. You're not
Right.
going to be perfect. Just try to be a good person.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The rest will work out. But I feel like you have that same mentality. You're trying to help people find the best fit, not the highest price or the easiest way out or anything like that.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you don't want them to regret, like we commented earlier, they regret it a year later. A lot of times that regret is, not only maybe I shouldn't have sold it, maybe I shouldn't have sold for that amount, maybe I should, because they realize the trade-offs that they thought they were making that made sense in that moment upon further reflection.
And where most of us live in, depending on where you live, it always seems like a small town to me.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're going to go out to a restaurant and you're going to see an employee. Do you want to be like, oh no, I don't want to talk to them or see them because I kind of screwed them over on my deal.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I had a client who had sold his business, and for an extraordinary multiple, great amount of money, and a year later said to the buyer, was sitting down in a meeting with the buyer and said, "It's amazing. It took my family 80 years to build this business, and it took you 12 months to destroy it."
That's
Heartbreaking.
brutal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's change to a happier tone. We're coming up on an hour, but I'd love to know what's on your mind. What's the next 5 years for you in your practice? We kind of talked about that a little bit. We didn't talk about where you talked a little bit about charity, but where do you spend some of your charitable time?
So I've been winding down on it, to be completely honest. I spent the last 20 years doing, I was on the board of the United Way and the Chamber, the Scranton Prep. I was on the board of trustees, along with some others, and made a conscious decision a few years ago that I was going to step back from that. I realized when I was down on the Wilkes-Barre Chamber board, and I was one of the old heads. Like, I had been on that board for like 19 years, and I thought, it's time to let somebody else have a turn. Like this isn't. So I really, my wife and I try to be much more financial supporters now. So we're supporting Scranton Prep's got a big capital campaign going on. Wyoming Valley Children's Association, which is for disabled children, is a phenomenal program. And I co-chaired their capital campaign, which just ended. So we're financially supporting that organization as well. And then my other business, PDQ, does a lot of we do a lot of in-kind donations for mailings and things like that to try and help local nonprofits. So mostly I do that. I will also, as part of my work, we obviously work to try and get clients to think about charities when they're making their planning, like what's a gift that you'd like to leave in your will. So, and that's becoming a very big thing for St. Joseph Center and some of the other groups that we work with. So hopefully we'll be a good source of funding for them.
Sounds like legacy planning.
It is very much legacy. And that's really, it's just trying to think again beyond what are people going to say about you 10 years after you're gone.
Beyond the bottom line?
Yes, beyond the line. Exactly, beyond the bottom line. Perfect.
That's great. Any other questions for Scott?
I don't think so. This has been really, really fascinating, and I need a will.
You don't have a will?
No.
Good Lord. She sat there quietly.
I know.
I'm handing a business card.
Oh, thank you.
That's how
please
business
call.
gets done
Okay.
here at the bottom
We'll get
line.
together.
Yes. I have children. Check.
Oh, good Lord. Maria.
I didn't think about that.
When you're like asking all these questions, I'm like, who is picking up my kids? Where are they going to sleep?
But I think to me that's a theme. If anybody should walk away with something, and you did a bunch of things in this conversation to trigger that, take a second to think about your life, whether you're driving into work or driving home or wherever, and just like, am I covering all my bases, right? And then if there's anything missing, give a quick call to you or a conversation with you. And
no, absolutely. And that's what I always tell my clients is the goal at the end of the process is you're going to sleep better at night. It's the pillow test. I have no answers about what's the exact right thing to do. You tell me what's going to help you sleep better at night, and that's what we're going to do.
Love it.
That's a wrap on today's episode of Beyond the Bottom Line. Thank you for listening. If this conversation sparked something for you, please let us know. Follow, share, or leave a review. It helps us keep having the conversations we love that you love to listen to. We'll be back in 2 weeks with more real talk from real leaders. Until then, here's to feeling successful beyond the bottom line.